Working on it here.
Okay. I have a friend.
So welcome to another Ask the OT with Gina Grothoff. Gina, with her 30 plus years as an OT, has brought her to this place. Oh, I got it. Getting, it's brought her to this place of consulting with people who are caring for either an aging parent or an aging loved one. In this series, Ask the OT, Gina gives a sampling of the consulting work that she does by answering questions live here on YouTube. So let's go to Gina here and welcome her. Gina, welcome back for the Ask the OT, and let's see where this takes us.
So I've started some of these. I'm trying to do this every time now with some kind of grounding exercise, something to kind of center us. We got to take care of ourselves, right? To take care of anybody else. And I love little critters that live outside. And this is a little caterpillar that will turn into a big, beautiful orange moth. And I went to identify it a couple days ago, and I pulled up what I thought was a free app to identify insects. Turned out it was a $40 app that I accidentally bought, and it told me it was a millipede. And then my 15-year-old helped me get rid of that app, and then we found a free app, and she's not a millipede. She is a moth. She'll turn into a big orange, beautiful moth. And so the first one I saw, I named Millie. And so caterpillars are great reminders that we all have potential and that we're just creeping along in this life and doing the best we can. And sometimes we need to nestle up in cocoon, take care of ourselves. I needed to do that Sunday and not go into work like I was scheduled because I just was getting so worn out. I was on the verge of really sick. And I cocooned in my hammock and took care of myself and to kind of recharge so that I could blossom into a beautiful butterfly. And all of us are going through this, whether we're young and new stage of our life or transitioning to, from one stage to another, turning 50, turning 40, turning 60, and even our loved ones with dementia. They're entering a different stage of their life, and it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. I'm worried about Millie over here. Um, that we can look at this as another stage and embrace what is. So if you're able to step outside or just plant your feet in the ground or just step out and take a breath of fresh air, breathing in slowly and deeply, holding it and breathing out. Don, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I can hear you.
I don't have my table out here, so I guess I'm going to go inside um, to see what questions we have today.
All right. Well, let me mention here that that for some reason the chat is not showing up. So what I'm going to recommend to anybody that is on, and I'll remind throughout the time we're on here that you can send. Well, actually, no. Now the chat is showing up. I don't know what I've done, but I've done something well here. Um, anyway, you asked me a question here, and I'm off on another tangent.
So I'm here to just help bring some insight and some ideas to caring for an aging loved one and navigating this journey. With our practice, Don and I look at the whole family because it's a juggling act, it's a balancing act of caring for anyone. And if you're like us, what we call the sandwich generation, what other people have termed caring for an aging loved one and raising children. And even if your children are in their 20s, like two of ours, you might still be supporting them emotionally, financially, or in some other manner. And having to take care of yourself and your needs. And a lot of us in Gen X and beyond are aging ourselves and have our own different health issues coming up.
Well, we
And so
actually have I'm sorry, we have a question
I
that,
have a question.
but I don't want to interrupt. I interrupted you, and I don't want to do that. So you want to finish what you were thinking or what your thoughts were?
Just helping to navigate this. So we do these Ask the OTs to kind of bring to light some information and some questions that we can answer for you, but know that to really get into your own personal situation, it really would take me spending a little more time with you one-on-one. And that's what the one-on-one consult work is all about, that I can do for you and your family and your loved one to help support you and give you a little more direct guidance. So
Well, I got this question that came in, and that's a good place for us to start. My father was living in an assisted living apartment. Recently, he fell and he hit his head and had to go to the hospital and went through quite a bit there, and a lot of issues came up as uh, kind of changes cognitive is what they're saying in this, and it's asking now the hospital is telling him that he can't go back to the assisted living. What am I supposed to do?
So I'm working on my pamphlet navigating the hospital to rehab and home because there are so many rules and regulations and processes that happen when someone goes in the hospital, especially a senior, and their amount of care that they need has changed. Um, and so understanding this and knowing this is something I've become quite experienced at, helping my dad and my mom navigate this, as well as in the rehabs I've worked at, helping family members and the patients to understand the processes of the hospital and such. Typically, if someone lives in an assisted living, the facility comes to assess them to determine if they're able to go back. Now, this is after most hospitals, at least in the areas I've lived, a therapy will evaluate someone in the hospital and they make recommendations to the doctor whether they can go back home to where they lived before, whether it's home, assisted living, independent living, memory care, and skilled nursing and nursing home is the highest level of care. Um, and so they kind of make recommendations. And so if someone was in assisted living and they've had significant injury in the hospital, the therapists are going to talk to the patient and hopefully reach out to you. This is where knowing this information, putting your number out there so that if you're not there when they come through, that they can reach out and call you and talk to you. You can ask this of the doctors and therapists, finding out when you might be able to talk to someone, because what they say depends on the level of assistance that can be provided for them. And every state has different regulations as far as assisted living, and different assisted living facilities have their own requirements and standards of the amount of care and help that they can provide. Typically, someone with that kind of injury is going to need some rehab services, typically, if either an acute rehabilitation hospital or what they call subacute or nursing home rehab. So it's short-term rehab to determine if they can get back to where they were living or what's the next steps that need to happen. The good thing is that Medicare and most supplemental plans will pay for hopefully at least 10 days of a rehab stay, depending on the person and progress. Hopefully, if it's a straight Medicare plan and not an Advantage plan, typically will cover 21 days, again, given that they have the need for therapy, that they're making progress. But this can kind of not only help your loved one get therapy, get the chance to regain their strength, work one-on-one with therapists and in groups to exercise and recover from whatever the injury is. Because we all need time to heal, no matter what type of injury there is. There can be some spontaneous recovery, some healing that happens within the body, even for people in their 90s plus. And Therapy services are to provide that additional support. And so this, it's covered by insurance to get the therapy. And then, okay, but and then what? Okay, the assisted living is saying no, he can no longer come back there. And knowing what your other options are. What is the plan? What are the other options? One thing is if you're in the hospital and trying to figure out where the person can go, if you can no longer take them home, say, you tell them that, and they will not discharge them until they have a placement. So these are the things I'm working on in this pamphlet, because if you say, oh, I can provide full care for them, the doctor's going to write a discharge order, and it could happen the day that the doctor talks to you and says they're medically stable. You can buy yourself time by saying, I don't think I can do that. And you can even have the ability to change your mind later. So not a direct answer to that question.
Yeah.
But, knowing there's different resources, knowing that you can, if someone is living in assisted living, find out what the criteria are. When my dad moved into one recently, I said, what is the criteria for him to continue living here? No matter what happens to him medically. And for his facility, he can't require more than one person assistance, like to get up out of bed, to get in a chair, to go to the bathroom. If it takes two people to assist him, then he's no longer at their level of assisted living care. And obviously, if someone has medical needs that need ongoing monitoring by a nurse and or doctor, that is more skilled level of care when you're talking skilled nursing home. So finding out social worker resources, what options there are out there, talking with the therapist wherever they're at, the hospital facilities, getting recommendations about places, looking into other resources in your area, other support services, because each situation is unique and different. And that's where it's hard to answer one question without having more pieces of the puzzle put together.
Yeah.
And advocating for that loved one, asking why. This is where you can get family members involved who don't live locally. So much is done virtually nowadays, with even care plan meetings and talking to doctors, and they can get involved. They can make phone calls. They can be there in Zoom calls. They can help search for resources, even if they live, across the country. They can be looking up online just as easily as you can. If you're the one local dealing with your loved one, they can work on other things to support and help, because it's a full-time job taking care of an aging loved one, even if they're not living in your home, but you are the responsible party and advocating for them and the person navigating them being in the hospital. And when you're dealing with, any of us that go in the hospital, we really need someone to advocate and support for us. When we're in the hospital, we're kind of at the mercy of what's going on around us, right? When you're giving birth, you want to have a support person. That's what doulas are for, and coaches and your spouse, and having other people in place to be that support system. And that's a planned event, unless there's an emergency delivery situation. And so we don't plan for these other things that happen. Our loved one falls, they break a leg, they hit their head. Now all of a sudden they have trauma to their brain and their cognition has changed, or now they have issues they didn't have before and they're not safe to be alone or to take care of themselves. Once you've had a fall, you're at higher risk for more falls. And there are just so many different causes of falls as we get older, and different factors that affect it.
So, I've got someone texted me another question that kind of fits in here, but it's kind of a tough one. It says, my mother is caring for my father. I never got along with my mother real well. I want to help my father, but not sure how I can do it with working with my mother. Any ideas on how how to do this? It's kind of an open question, but
Yeah, and
some thoughts with it.
sure, and that's difficult. We all have different family relationships, and that dynamic greatly affects our interactions and caring for our loved ones. I see this all the time with, the families and the patients I work with and their family members. And it makes it kind of more complicated in different ways. And especially in this situation, so you're wanting to support your father and your mom's caring for him, but you have a contentious relationship or whatever the background is, right? And so having to navigate that is like a whole nother level, right, Don? When Don works with people, doing EFT, emotional freedom technique, or other, I mean, that's a great way to kind of process through things and the difficulties you're having, even if you can't affect the relationship more than just from your perspective of it
Mhm.
and how you approach it. It would be great if you could improve your communication with, your mom and make changes, but that's kind of a long range thing. And it's also in the moment she's dealing with caring for your dad. And so that in itself adds extra stress level. And so that can affect the dynamic as well, because it goes both ways, right? You've got your issues with the person, they've got their issues with you. And so there's a bit of a lot of tension like
Mhm.
underlying there. And so we've got to get in touch with what's going on with us. We've got to kind of deal with that, whether it's working with a therapist, whether it's using EFT, whether it's having other methods of us processing, journaling, and to be able to step outside and say, okay, I'm going to plan my interactions. The end goal here is helping my dad. And so thinking through how we're going to talk about this, how we're going to, is there another person in your family, someone you're close to, someone who kind of gets that relationship that can help support you? Because it can make a big difference when someone else kind of gets it. They've been there with you. They're either a friend you've had for a while, a sibling, another family member, someone who can be a little bit of a support for you, even if they don't fully understand it. But if they have an inkling of understanding, because we got to remember the end goal. We got to remember, you want to help that person.
Yeah.
And we have to go, okay, we don't know what they're going to say. They might say things that are going to irritate us, that are going to tag or even trigger us, that are going to upset us, and just kind of like, okay, this could happen. Think about worst case scenario and kind of make a plan with communicating. And that's where things like I statements are important. You know, when you start saying you do this, you're pointing the finger, and it flares tensions, and it raises anxiety and interrupts the ability to have connection and have communication and relationships. So saying, I'd like to help out, I'd like to be involved, these are some things I might be able to do to help, and giving them time. Sometimes depending on the person, email or texting can be a good communication method when you've got contentious relationships, because it gives the other person time to process. It allows you to type something out and like think about it before you send it and just reread it and like give yourself a minute and not do it when you're angry. Write out what you really want to say when you're angry and let that sit. But giving that time in between, um, because we do have emotions and feelings, and we've lived a life and have interactions with people that affects our ability to communicate effectively and to get involved. Um,
Well, I was going to add in, they talk about with when I'm working with EFT and I'm working with a client, there's two things that, and you've kind of talked about them. Um, One is I talk about the best you really you can't change somebody else, So, but what I do believe is by changing your own energy and changing the way you handle things, you can influence others and possibly cause some change through your influence, by having a good energy on your part, holding yourself true to yourself, being authentic with yourself, that kind of thing can make a big difference in how the other person responds. And then
mhm,
the other thing was communication. You talked about it kind of. I always say it's you can do this proper communication in a one way where you handle, because you and I talk about the imago therapy and the mirroring, and I've actually taken that because that's really built for couples, how you communicate and one person's listener, one person is the one has the problem that's talking. And one of the things I've kind of taken that too is that that can be done in a one-way scenario to make it effective. Like you say, using I statements, approaching them in a different way, um, so that they don't become combative, that they don't become argumentative, you know. And anyway, so that's what I tend to work with people on is how you do that one-way communication by holding true to yourself and being able to how you respond to things and things like that.
And keeping that end goal in mind. You maybe even having that little mantra going through your head or write it on a piece of paper as you're talking to the person, whether it's on the phone or hearing their response that, okay, I want to help out my dad. That's what I really want here. And okay, being prepared for what might way the conversation might go. And also stepping into it, like you said, Don, with your own positive attitude with it. Because if we go into it going, oh my God, this is going to be awful. I don't want to deal with her. She does this and she says this and she's going to make this more difficult. And here I am trying to help her and she's not going to appreciate it. Right. If we go into it with that energy, um, probably not going to have a good outcome, right? When we're starting out that way. And it's not that we go into it thinking, oh, this is going to be beautiful and we're going to have a reconnection. Not at all what I'm saying, but saying, okay, this is what my intentions are. I want to help. And how can I present this in a way, I'd like to be helpful. These are things I'm capable of doing. These are things I'm not capable of doing. So you kind of have to kind of spell that out with yourself ahead of time so that you go into conversations prepared and, having your own support system, having that ability to vent and to process, right? Because we can't change other people. And um,
Well, and
but
having that ally, um, the other sibling that actually gets along with mom, working through them to be able to get to do the things you need to do, I think is important.
and if you don't have that, just having your own support system or something, whether it's online, Don does virtual tapping groups. If you want to learn more about tapping, we'll have to share that link. Um, it's a good way to get introduced to it. Finding other communities online and support. There's lots of different support groups, caring for aging parents. And, this is something as we grow this practice with helping people that could be in our future of a community. But, you need to be able to let your emotions and your feelings out. Because if we just try to stuff them and I'm just going to do this. Okay, okay. She's going to say, I'm just going to try. It's going to build up. There's going to be resentment buildups, even if it's slowly and we think we're handling it. Um, and when we're not recognizing that and paying attention, we're just trying to be tough and we're trying to get the work done because we got to do this and we got to do this and then we got to go to the store and we got to take care of our kid and they need to get enrolled in school and we got to do that. And then, oh, the new job, I've got to set things up for that. There's all these lists of things and we can just be plowing forward. And then all of a sudden they say one thing to you and just sets you off.
Explosion.
So we've got to recognize our own shortcomings and even come into a conversation like that. Like, in the past, I realize I've said some things that can be hurtful and just owning your own stuff. Don't even make it a just own your own stuff and know that they've got to do that for themselves too. And if the end goal is really just getting the help for your dad and, navigating through the way the relationship exists, um, just
Well,
yeah, keeping
and
those things in
it doesn't hurt too to in getting past it to think about kind of putting yourself in your
their
mom's
shoes.
shoes
Yeah.
and realizing that a lot of what she's going through is the anxiety and stress and the pressure and all the stuff that she's having. So some of the what she might be coming at you with is based on the anxiety and stress that she's going through may not have anything to do with you. And so she may not be able to handle it the best that she could because of all that that's going on for her.
So, and again, I'd love to help you individually, one-on-one, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a video consult, because we all have different personalities. We all have different past life experiences. I worked with so many different people, and how I approach everyone is not the same because people are different. People have different backgrounds, and understanding their frame of reference and what matters and what values and what things are important to them, because it's not the same for everybody. And realizing those things can make a big difference in supporting this person, and also having an awareness of their own limitations. I see a lot of people and their spouses are their main caregivers, but their spouses have possibly undiagnosed cognitive impairment and things that affect their ability to make the best judgments. And so that adds an extra challenge. These other things can be going on with people. Obviously more common as we get older that these things can be happening, and they can be very slow and subtle, and first just look like annoying little habits, and not realizing that there can be some underlying impairment that really is making it harder. Someone with dementia of any degree, even mild cognitive impairment, um, their brain is affected in how they process and how they manage information, and so how they interact with people and how they make decisions. And we've got to accept that, just like we would a child in different developmental stages, that their brain is not able to process the way we are. And so there's kind of this reverse thing going on with dementia. And they're still an adult, and they still have had a life's worth of experience. So they're not all of a sudden your child, and we don't need to talk to them like they're your child, because they are a full grown adult, and even with significant dementia have had lifetime of experiences, and that still needs to be respected.
So, this is a half hour of time with Gina, though, where you're able to get some answers, but we can do more. Gina can be with you and hold your hand through this process and consult with you and be able to answer more of your questions, help you to guide you through the transitions that you may have to go through, from a home to hospital, from hospital to a rehab or to a facility. Those transitions are challenging and complex, and there's a lot to them. And Gina can guide you through that. That's what she does. That's part of our services that she offers, and of course I offer the service of helping them with the anxiety and stress that go along with it. So,
Right. And that's what I've been doing as an occupational therapist all these years, is helping people to function as independently and as safely as possible in the best possible environment. We call it the least restrictive, where they're able to do the most for themselves. And part of that is having caregivers in place, and that they understand how to best support people. I spend a lot of time educating caregivers, because I can get someone to work with me and walk safely to the bathroom, but if the person who's going to be caring for them at home or wherever doesn't know that method to do that, then things are not going to go as smoothly when they go home. And so there's just so many things that I do, and I want to be able to share the experience and the information I've had. I've learned so much more over the past year with navigating my dad moving into assisted living, and then having a trip to the hospital from assisted living, and figuring out going to rehab versus back to the assisted living right away. And I thought I understood a lot of these challenges, and it's like, okay, I'm learning even more, because there's just so many other layers of things that I didn't realize. And it's complicated. And it's complicated for me, who's been in OT for 30 years and worked in a geriatric rehab in all these different settings. And so, I love being able to help support people and kind of give them those inside pieces of information. I work weekends at my rehab facility. And so when people come in from the hospital on a Friday afternoon, evening, Saturday, Sunday, there's not the administrative support. There's not as much information. Things get messed up. Medications don't get processed as quickly. And I've been helping families navigate things for a long time with that. And sometimes, it's just having that information. Oh, if someone had just told me that it could be like this, that, they don't have their own pharmacy at the facility like the hospital does, or, just, and I just want to be able to do more of that and work one-on-one with people, because I am passionate about helping care for people and seniors, and understanding differences in people. So please reach out to me with your questions. I'd love to talk more, whether it's just a 1 hour consult, or whether, I follow you for a longer period of the process or as needed. Um, I'd like to be there to support you, however.
And you can find out more information by going to our website, focusedhealthyfamily.com. And there you can find out more about us. You can also um, contact us for that consult. Um, so that's the Ask the OT for today. We've got more coming up in the future here. Look
Be
at
sure
go to
Sorry. Be sure to tune into our podcasts, which air every Thursday, where we cover all topics of parenting our children, our parents, and ourselves. Yet we've been focusing on caring for aging loved ones, juggling those responsibilities. And send us questions for the next Ask the OT. Pardon my interruption, Don.
It's okay. I was going to say you can find out when the next one is on our website. Again, focushealthyfamily.com. And that's it for today.
Remember, how you speak to your children and your aging loved ones influences their future and yours.